Hey there, welcome to saas.unbound, brought to you by saas.group. I'm your host, Anna Dana, and this is the show where we chat with inspiring founders and experts to get an inside scoop on how they made their business a success. And today with me is Nick Russell, co-founder and director of Dualo, knowledge management solution that empowers digital teams to make better and faster decisions. Their Insights Hub product was named a must-have research tool in 2022 by UX Planet. Congratulations.
Thank you
And
very much.
they continue winning the market with an exceptional SaaS tool. So, welcome to the show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having us, Anna.
Yeah, thank you. And, I already saw you and learned a little bit about what you do and how you do it from a webinar that you did with the guys from UserSnap, which was pretty cool. And I learned about it and I was like, okay, we definitely need to talk. That's an exciting thing. But of course, I'd like to learn a little bit more about the journey to it, right? So maybe let's dig into your background a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So prior to Dualo, personally, I was leading digital product teams throughout my career prior to the startup world. So I was leading teams at companies like ASOS, Gusto, Thomas Cook, and The Telegraph. So I had quite a wide range of industries that I'd worked across, but I'd been sort of, you know, experiencing firsthand the difficulty and the challenge when it comes to not just when you're a new joiner, but when you're embarking on a new initiative within the company or designing a new product or feature set or customer journey, just how difficult it was to get hold of key insights, key learnings that people had acquired across the business around their customers, around business objectives and goals, and bringing that all together was a really, really big challenge, almost more challenging than it should be, it felt. And I was working with some of the very best teams, some of the fastest growing startups at the time, and everyone was struggling with this. And I just thought there has to be a better way to approach this. And at the same time, my best mate from childhood, Dan, who's also one of my co-founders, was experiencing exactly the same as a product designer. So he was doing lots of research with customers and helping to design the experience, going through exactly the same challenges and pains. And so back in 2020, at the start of the pandemic, the opportunity presented itself to us to come together and effectively start building a solution that we never had as part of our experience in the industry. And then 3 years later, here we are today with Dualo in its current form. So that's the origin story, if you like.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay. I like when it's your own problem and you just start kind of building on top of it, trying to solve your own pain. But, a lot of stories kind of go from there to, oh, let's fast forward 3 years. We kind of just, build the product and then gave it to the customers. But that's kind of the trickiest part, right? How do you give the product to the customers and what makes you as a team and the company go from 0 to 1, right? So maybe let's uncover that a little bit. So, like, what were the first steps? There was you, there was your co founder, but, for some products, for some startups, it stays the problem of just two people, if they cannot move the needle and just, find the first customer, right? It's just an idea before the money hits your pocket. So, how did you go there?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, what were our first steps? So we were, you know, I remember when we started the business together and I was chatting with, I think, one of my uncles about that I'd been, you know, this was what I was doing now and I was starting a business. And he sort of said to me, wow, that's a really interesting time to start a business, like sort of in the midst of COVID and everything that was going on. And I kind of turned around to him and said, well, actually, it's a really good time to start a business because there's no distractions. Everyone's working from home. So we can get in front of like super senior directors really quickly. We don't have to travel across town or make arrangements. So we can, have these amazing interviews with these amazing people to sort of test, validate, confirm our initial assumptions around the problem space and what we wanted to solve for. And it was just super cheap, so I just had this kind of distraction free time with this amazing opportunity to get out there and test with Dan that what we were thinking scaled industry wide. And so we really used that first 6 months, just the two of us, absolutely zero tech whatsoever. We knew that we wanted to become a technology company, but ultimately we were like, let's just keep things super cheap for now. We hadn't even raised any funds at that point. We just basically were working out of our own pocket, and we decided, look, when we're working with all these great teams, there's never enough time to do the whole discovery piece properly. And what I mean by discovery is, speaking with customers, potential users, trying to figure out what the product might look like in form of prototype, starting to think about, the market that you might want to tackle and starting to flesh that out as well. And so we decided to do 6 months upfront discovery, and we just got deep into it. Like, we had these, and still have these, Miro boards from back in the day where we just were just speaking with hundreds and hundreds of product managers, designers, researchers, stakeholders, data scientists, product leaders, design leaders, and we just mapped all of the conversations and started to figure out this kind of simplified mental model as to how teams approach turning customer insight into products and services, and where the bottlenecks were and how we could streamline this thing. And so, ironically, like, at the same time as us using that period, to that first chapter, if you like, to figure out our methodology, like what's the kind of thought leadership that we want to bring to the market, we're also thinking there's got to be a better way than having a big messy Miro board to do this. So those two
Right.
things came together. So we kind of developed the methodology, and then we're also thinking, how could we do the product side better? And both of those things came together at the same time. So that was the first step, if you like, was a real deep dive into the psyche of the potential user, and just realizing, wow, everyone we've spoken with has this problem. Everyone's looking for a better way to do this, and we can be the guys that fill that gap.
Right. Awesome. And again, like, just on top of that, a lot of times when you talk to somebody, they're like, yeah, sure, like there is this problem. But I guess the actual validation happens again when the money hits your bank account, right? When they actually pay for the solution. So at what point did you have something to monetize? And how did you go around, the pricing? What was your first price for the product? Was it free? And how did you go from there?
Yeah, good question. So following that discovery process, we realized we had something that was worth continuing with full time, basically. And we raised a small friends and family angel round to get us going. And that allowed us to effectively start covering ourselves, so that we, were no longer just continuing to eat into savings and credit. And also bring on board our technical co-founder, Mike. So that's really when the pedal hit the metal, if you like, and sort of trying to turn what we had in prototype form into a usable product that we could market and sell. And so Mike joined us in January 2021. And I think we had a live version 1 of the product, a usable version of the product, within the first 6 months. And we had our first paycheck, which I still remember vividly to this day, came in the September of that year. So the way that we did that was we worked with customers from the very beginning. So throughout that discovery period, pre-Mike, pre us being a trio, we would continue, and still continue to this day, the relationship with those customers. One of our big customers in the UK here, Zoopla, was one of the customers that we interviewed way back in 2020 and built prototypes with. So we effectively, we worked with the customers to understand, potential reference customers, if you like, to understand the problem, put solutions in front of them, tailor the prototypes. So by the time we got through to a usable product, they became our first 10 customers, if you like. So we'd gone through the whole journey with them that way. So yeah, I mean, the pricing is part art, part science, and is something that you should continually experiment with. I think our first paycheck, if you like, was for a a fairly small monthly subscription to the product, and now we're also selling much larger annual and multi-year contracts. So it's amazing to cast your mind back and just see how far things have come, and how the portfolio of things that you're offering and the pricing that you're offering evolves over time. So yeah, it's quite nice to think all the way back.
Right. Yeah, yeah. I really like to bring back, the memories and the first tracks, because that's kind of like what everyone wants to know. Like, what was the turning point? I know, going from, hey, I think I have a good idea, to like, oh, somebody paid me for a solution. So yeah, awesome. But I also know that for all of you, for all three, right? It's the first company ever to build. So you're kind of like a perfect trio for a product team, right? But you had no experience in business. How did it affect anything, if it did at all? How was it, building a product versus building a company, or doing it simultaneously?
Yeah, I think that's been one of the biggest learnings, and it's so easy in hindsight to look back and even on the past week and sort of think, oh, how amazing was that week. You sort of erase all of the brutality and the chaos and everything that goes with being a startup founder. And actually, side note, one of the things I've started to do more recently is actually at the end of each day note down what was the one big positive thing that happened today, and I force myself to choose what that thing
Oh,
is. And it's really helped me to sort of get through the volatility of everything that comes with early stage business. And just looking back on that actually on the weekend for the past couple of months, it's quite an amazing thing to do. So if anyone is sort of looking at ways to handle that, that's been working really well for me. So a bit of a tangent there, but something that's super powerful, I
yeah,
found.
yeah, that's great.
um yeah. So, and yeah, looking back, it's easy to paint a glorified picture. But one of the things that we just, I guess, because we were all coming into this, fairly new. Mike did have a bit of experience with a smaller venture prior to Dualo. Dan and I had both done things that were either non-commercially driven or, again, on a small scale, very different to SaaS and software. So we all had the sort of passion and the interest in starting a business, but nothing of this sort of scale and size of challenge that we were tackling. And so I say to people when they ask me, "Oh, I'd love to do that myself, and what would you recommend?" I say, "Listen, day one, you need to be thinking, and this is easier said than done now, having some experience, but you need to be thinking about the target market, like the customer, and the size of that market, and how you're going to monetize what you're doing outside of the product that you're developing." So every team that comes into startup has its own DNA. We were very much dream team, modern dream team, product team, if you will. Product manager experience for myself, product designer experience for Dan, and then the product developer experience for Mike. But what became very apparent to us very quickly was that we had no idea how to develop a market. We had no idea how to develop a go-to-market. And we absolutely had no idea how to bring those two things together with your product strategy. So we were super keen to build this amazing product. And then we were kind of like, once we started having some early signs of success, the question suddenly flicks to, okay, well, how do you turn this into a sustainable business? How do you scale what you've done so far? How do you make your marketing and sales efforts as efficient as possible so that you can really start to step up and step change the revenues and the growth? And so, yeah, for us, it was a baptism of fire in terms of the growth side of the business. And you learn because you have to, and because everything is on the line. You are so focused on learning and nailing everything that's put in front of you. And I think that's the piece that I love so much about it is, like, it's ups and downs, but when you come out the other side of a new challenge, you feel 10 times stronger for that. And that's something that I never experienced in my corporate life.
Wow, it does sound very inspiring. I mean, I listen to you and I'm like, oh, maybe I should get there. Like honestly, this is the best page ever for, start your startup. But I guess, yeah. I mean, of course, there are some challenges and the mistakes that you're making as a first-time founder. But again, having this team, having this like super strong product team behind that product, I kind of guess that it also gives you a certain advantage. Like you are actually building a perfect, amazing product that people love, that looks great. And, again, from some of the conversations on the podcast, I feel like, yeah, if there is a designer on the team or a product manager, it usually gives, like, you go to the website because when I do research, I go and see like how the tool looks like, what the website looks like their copy and all that, and you can tell it looks a bit different. It has a different vibe. You can feel how much thought they put there. And with you, it's kind of the same. I mean, I really admired what you did there. So, were there any other like advantages uh, from maybe a customer point of view? Maybe there was some feedback that was, again, exceptionally helpful, just in understanding that you are doing everything right on the product side.
Yes, absolutely. So, user feedback is absolutely critical on the product side of things, as objection handling is absolutely critical on the sales side of things. So, you have to learn to deal with being rejected on a daily basis, multiple times a day. And you have to develop a stoic mindset to everything that you do. And when it comes to the product, the advantage that we had is that we had feedback coming in from very, very early, right? Pre-code, on the prototype level. And so we built that sort of culture with our customer base from the very off. And even with new customers now, like we rolled on Mozilla recently, and we go through that process of onboarding those bigger customers and making it really clear that they can get in touch at any time with any problems, issues, feedback. We're only a phone call or an email away. And that's the advantage of being at the earlier stage in some of the larger companies. They can get right in touch with the founders, the directors, and have a conversation that way. So what did we do? We looked a lot into how we position ourselves and how we do that in a way that makes us look very different to everything that's on the market already. And that's absolutely key in the early stages. Like, you want to stand out so that people talk and remark about you. And so you need to find the angle that really sets you apart from the rest. And so we did a lot of work on positioning. We've done a lot of work at looking at the solutions, particularly in that upfront discovery, but we do it on a continuous basis, what other people are using in the industry, and how we help to move people away from incumbent systems and systems that just weren't really designed for the job. If you look at the user research industry specifically, which is where we're focused currently, is it consists, knowledge management consists of spreadsheets, wikis, shared drives, which are super messy, or they require a lot of effort to turn into an effective insights repository. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's the sort of all-in-one research analysis platforms trying to do the insights repository bit, but doing it really badly. There's far too much going on, and they're even now, some of them, partnering with wikis, can you believe, to try and solve that problem. Man, it's a
Yeah.
mess. So we just do one bit, and we do it really well, and that's the bit that no one else is doing. And so that's the insights hub, the insights repository. We basically make it super easy for people to consolidate their key research findings, their key learnings that they have on their customers and users, and make this visible and engaging for wider stakeholders. And that's the bit that's missing, right? There's a gap today between research teams, product teams, and stakeholders. And we close that gap. We make it easier for people to make better decisions fast and connect the dots. And so that's the bit that's been overlooked in the past decade when it comes to repurposing tools like spreadsheets and things, or using some of the all-in-one solutions. So that's our advantage. That's because we've built it with stakeholders and teams from the off. We know how both of those groups work. We know what noise to get rid of, and we know what to simplify and put into a product that speaks to both of those parties very clearly and very intuitively.
That's fascinating. All right, thank you. So, and I guess, I mean, being a product manager, product designer, product developer, you also have a bit of a, I don't know, upper hand when it comes to working with the feedback, because it's been your realm for so long, right? So, like you already mentioned, you know what noise to get rid of. So it's maybe a bit of an advantage, because for some founders, again, what I hear from the conversations here, it's very difficult to see, like, who are we listening to, like what features we prioritize, what customer we're building for. Is it the biggest customer? Is it the most paying customer? Or is it just all the customers that bring the volume? So now, since you're moving a little bit, as far as I can guess, a little bit upmarket, has that changed a little bit for you, like who you're listening? Is it the same 10 customers that were in the beginning, or is it somebody else? Have you developed a bit of a more comprehensive idea of what customers you're listening to and whose feedback you're prioritizing?
Yeah, of course. So our retention's been pretty good from those initial set of customers. As you can imagine, like an insights repository where you're organizing, managing all this key data is a very sticky product if it's done well. And so our sort of more recent wave of customers, the ticket sizes are becoming bigger, and I think we are, which is great in terms of for our growth. But what it does mean is balancing bigger opportunities with smaller opportunities. As you say, who do you listen to there? And I think ultimately, no one wants to, I mean, this is certainly a strategy, and it's a strategy that people have adopted and been very successful with in terms of partnering with one very big company, right? We hear about those organizations that will partner with like an IDEO or an IBM or something like that, and they'll basically kind of become like a partner to that company, and they will
Right.
build the product for their company, and then they will see what the wider market appetite is like, or they'll exit to that partner, or whatever works for them. I think there's a danger in doing that, because if you're trying to solve a big problem for a big population, then the risk of that approach is that you end up basically becoming, how do I put this? Becoming an outsourced product IT team in some ways for that big
Right.
company, building a product just for them, and they get a really sweet deal. Yes, you become very successful off it, but you might not then have something that's relevant to the rest of the industry. And I've always said that I think like playing in that sort of space where you've got smaller and still large companies, but just not one big reliant company, is a better place to be, because you're going to be getting lots more feedback, and you're going to also de-risk a couple of things: the product roadmap, but also if that one big customer goes down, likely they won't because they're so big, but if they decide this isn't for us anymore,
Right.
you're sort of done, right? Whereas with lots of customers, you're spreading your bets, and you're also
Mhm.
putting yourself in a position where you can hold yourself accountable in a more, and again, this is not to downplay that strategy, but in what I've found, you can hold yourself accountable in a authentic, reliable way to your product roadmap, your vision. We have a really strong vision at Dualo, solid, it's shared, it's agreed, it's understood, and it's something we developed in those earliest of days, and it hasn't changed. We're still heading for that same goal, that same sort of like 5-7 year goal that we set in the beginning. And the advantage of having multiple customers means that we can take on board their feedback. We can always look to the vision, which we share with them as well, and then we can use that to help articulate what we're going to work on right now, what might come next, and what might be later, but is also something that, is sat on the roadmap and might need some more discovery, and we'll keep you posted on what's coming next. But we're always going to do it based on customer value, but you need to keep that business and the vision in mind as well. And so that's the key. And I think regardless, yes, of course, politics and contract size and all this stuff comes into play when you're making decisions. But ultimately, what you should be doing is sort of, gathering what users are looking for, what current business goals that links to within the business, with a sprinkling of these guys might have more of a voice, but ultimately trying to level the playing field. That's the job of a product manager, right? A product leader is to take all this data on
Yeah.
and figure out the right choice as to not put the customer or the business at too much risk, and add as much value as possible to both of those parties.
All right. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. All right. So, again, we're moving to bigger tickets. We're moving a little bit up market from startup to scale up. Let's say, right? So, how were you able to find that repeatable value and go into that sustainable growth trajectory?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so that's been a lot of the thinking that we've done through this year. Basically, is how do we take the what we've created as a core business, a core offering, and start to make each of those elements more streamlined and valuable. And I love the concept of the whole product by Jeffrey Moore. So he talks about, the fact that you have your high tech product, and then you have a number of products and services that augment that. And effectively that allows you to flex your offering based on the customer that you're speaking with. I think that's something we do really well at Dualo. So our solution, if you like, is almost like a pick and mix bag. So not everyone is going to want just an insights repository or be able to just pick that up and run with it. Some teams might want some upfront coaching or some coaching alongside that to help people adjust adjust their mindset and their processes. And we also offer a service where, for like super time poor teams, our concierge team will actually build the initial repository for you. So we have these sort of pick and mix of solutions, and that's been a huge learning and a huge evolution and development of the business. To develop those services alongside the technical product means that when we're sitting there on a discovery call and we're trying to understand someone's problem and can we help them, we have more of a sort of malleable solution. We can say, oh, okay, well, I think it sounds like you might benefit from the product, but also some of this coaching here. Does that sound right to you? And we sort of work through and arrive at a package with them. And so each of those elements of the business, we are now in a position where we're doing that optimization for scaling. So we're looking at the product and we're looking at how we optimize in terms of the sort of first in experience, and like how teams invite other collaborators and integrate with other tools, and polishing the core product that we've had out there for a little while. And then on the academy side of things, the coaching services that we offer, we have started to tighten what was fairly scrappy in the early days. It was sort of Miro boards and workshops and things that we created that we knew worked for us and other teams. And we took teams through and we were like, well, can we neaten these up, and can we take all the learnings from the first set of customers, and can we create reusable templates and actually fire these out and launch these out as free templates that people can self-serve and guide themselves through? And then if they need additional help or support, then who are they going to come to? They're going to come to us to, say, hey, I want to now do X, Y, or Z. And so we've done a number of those, and we're continuing to develop those. And then on the concierge side, the build side, we're doing the same in terms of, okay, once you've done a number of these builds, you realize the process is fairly similar. And so in the product, how can we streamline things? But also from a process perspective, how can we streamline the build of these things? So you've got business refinement, product refinement in terms of going from startup to scale up, but you also have efficiencies and scaling up on those two other bubbles that I talked about, which is the market and the go-to-market earlier, right? So sales and marketing? How do you streamline the pipeline? How do you streamline the process of going outbound, reaching out to people, the messaging, the sequencing? How do you get better at targeting the right types of customers and automate a lot of that process so that you're not doing as much of the sort of busy work of actually sending these messages? It's, set it up once, fire it out, and people that are interested will reply, and we'll set a call up with them. On the marketing side, how can we um, chisel down big chunks of content? Our white papers, our webinar recordings, our blog posts, and how can we make use of tooling like AI and ChatGPT to help us refine, or help us think about a slightly different angle, or sort of turn one piece of content into 10 pieces of content. So effectively, you're sort of like leveraging these technologies, you're optimizing the processes so that it feels like the team is much bigger than it is internally, and you're able to do
Yeah.
things a lot faster and free up the founders to think more strategically about what next.
Yeah, that's wonderful. But I also think like I saw that, well, I saw you first at the webinar, right? And then I saw that you're doing more of those. And I was like, okay, but so many founders are actually afraid of doing things that don't scale, right? But I think these things scale perfectly. First of all, a webinar or like a podcast is a way for you to talk not to just one on one with your customer, but to talk with many, right, to present your idea, what you're doing, or do a webinar and just like explain how different you are, or just like lay out your expertise, which again adds so much trust to the brand, because that's where you're coming from, right? And they can
Yes.
trust you because you know what you're talking about, right? So how did you go to that? How did you decide that you're going to do something that doesn't really scale as so many founders are afraid of?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, jumping into things that you're afraid of or new is a regular occurrence as a founder, and you just have to realize that the business and the vision is much bigger than you are. You're part of a whole, and so you have to face those challenges or opportunities face head on and take them on, and you always learn and become stronger and enjoy them. The most testing weeks are the most rewarding in my experience. And so that's the first thing to comment to that point. I think in terms of unscalable, yeah, you have to do things in an unscalable way to learn how to do them in a scalable way. Like you have to go through the
Yeah.
pain of doing things completely manually in order to identify
Hmm.
which where the bottlenecks are and where the really uncomfortable stuff is, so that you can improve that and focus on improving that for your teammates but also your customers, right? So in the earliest days of our concierge service, I was the one building these repositories for people. So I was literally,
Makes sense.
cool, I will go in and we'll take this away, and I'll build the first few reports and insights into the system. And that allowed us to spin up, or to put into action this idea of concierge, and to develop that into now what it is today. But also through going through that, and it was painful in the early days because there were things that weren't working so well, and there was, and our understanding was developing as well as to how to pull these things together in a way for other companies. And so, but you learn how to then optimize and automate it. So you have to do that. Same on the sales front as well. I remember probably Christmas of 21, Dan and I were both working on sales at the time, and we were just like trying to run before we could walk. Like we were setting up all sorts of automated sequences. I think at one point, like, he'll probably be embarrassed that I'm explaining this part of the story, but we even set up like a Black Friday deal for a B2B enterprise software. Yeah, we
Okay.
experimented with all sorts of stuff, and some more successful than others. But to bring it back to the point about unscalability, Mike, he encouraged us to actually, because of his development experience, his technical experience, encouraged us to first walk the first mile manually, and really ahead of us setting up any automation, really understand how to do the 0 to 1 go through all of that pain and then come back to automation. So that was like a real like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And having done that across multiple areas of the business now, and seeing that you really have to just go through the pain to get the results. I mean, it's the same with anything in life, right? That is the way to then start to scale. And your point about, educating and brand building and trust and personality, all this stuff comes together, right? It's not, we haven't spent a penny on marketing yet. And so all of our marketing
Oh,
comes
wow.
down to webinars, blogs, the newsletter, putting value first content out there. And ultimately, we, ahead of you being global, recognized by everyone as the go-to place for insights repository, which is our vision for the future. But ahead of that is sort of like, people are buying into you as much as they're buying into the product. And so if you're able to put yourselves out there on webinars, podcasts, we have a YouTube channel we've been experimenting with. And ultimately, people are going to watch those and put a face to a name. And then before you have your first call, you sort of know a little bit about the
Yeah.
person that you're buying from. And that's really important. It's the same as when you join a company and people on the wiki put their, here's a bit about me and I like traveling and I'm a bit of a foodie and, this is what I'm all about. Like, just by putting yourself out there, stuff will come back to you because you are building that brand and you are wrapping yourself into the personal brand, into the company brand. And that's it's fun. It's fun to do, and it results in the results. But you've got to keep pushing. Like overnight success, companies just suddenly taking off and being this thing. It's all bullshit. Like you behind every company that takes off is a lot of hardworking people that are pushing, come rain or shine. And so you have to put yourself out there in order to get those results, and that's how companies become successful.
Absolutely, love that. I mean, everyone's talking about the fact that the sales processes change, and we're coming back to like a more natural. Hey, here's what I have. Do you want to buy it? Instead of just like a cold email or automations and ads. And yeah, putting your face out there is amazing. Like when I reach out to founders, I first go and Google and YouTube and watch them talk, and see like what kind of do kind of a vibe check, a feeling, who I'm going to to talk to. So, and it helps immensely in like building relationships, making the podcast a bit more personal and stuff like that. And I guess, well, it's the same in sales, right? You build the relationship, especially if you're going after bigger tickets and bigger companies. So wonderful. Thanks for sharing that. I just have
Yeah.
a couple more questions, the usual ones. All right. The first one is, of course, what has been so far the biggest win and the biggest failure?
Yeah, sure. So I think the biggest win we touched on a little bit earlier for me, like the one that vividly sticks in my mind, is the receiving that first payment for the product. I have a copy of that saved on my phone still as a favorite, with the key details redacted, of course.
Framed.
Yeah, that's a big moment for any founder of any product. It's a sign. It's a very strong signal that you haven't gone crazy, and you can turn that one into a 10, and that into 100, and that into 1,000, and so on. So it's the first real point of, okay, we are truly onto something that we can scale commercially, and so that's always stuck with me for sure. In terms of the biggest fail, I would definitely say the biggest fail, being a first time founder, is completely underestimating how hard it would be to start up a company and get to where we've got to. Honestly, it's absolutely brutal at times. And maybe this will balance out my sales pitch for becoming a founder earlier on in our chat.
Yeah.
I'm incredibly proud of what we've been able to achieve so far as a team. And I'm really looking forward to that next 10x in growth that we're going after. But you have to be sure that you want to do this, because it's going to test you in ways that you didn't even realize was going to be possible. And you need to be able to balance the ins and outs, the ups and downs of being a founder with having a really strong, healthy personal life. You know, your fitness, the people that you surround yourself with, your husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, friends, like that's really like behind every founder, behind every successful story is a ton of people, support network, and a healthy mindset to take yourself away from what can be a bit crazy at times and just balance the whole thing out. That's what really keeps you going through everything. So that the biggest fail has also been the biggest opportunity in a way
Yeah,
to
yeah, that's
strengthen
true.
it.
That's often the case. Wonderful. All right. And well, the last one is about hack, right? It can be any hack, growth, dealing with, being a founder, uh, sales, anything that was, working for you or still working for you, hopefully. Maybe not very conventional for others, but something that you're willing to share.
Yeah, of course. So one of the hacks that works really well for us in recent years was LinkedIn voice notes. This works
Okay.
really well for us in terms of cold outbound. Like we pretty much doubled our conversion, open rate conversion overnight using this tactic. And everyone's doing it now, pretty much. I'm seeing it a lot more, and I think people are becoming more familiar with it as prospects as well. But if you haven't tried it or you're not sure how to do it, you can't do it on the web version of LinkedIn. But if you go on your mobile and then you go to message someone, direct message someone, you can effectively drop them a voice note. Now, once you've sort of leveraged your connection requests to be able to reach out to your target profiles, it's a really, yeah, I just find it plays to the curious. And so, instead of someone trying to read a message which you've tried to make as short as possible and never does justice what your business
Yeah.
is all about and how it can help, they're just going to get like a little, and who doesn't want to click that play button, right? Even if it's been sent from some, to them at the time, random stranger, people open that and
Yeah.
listen to it because they're curious to know who sent me a voice note. And that has opened so many doors for us. So that's a little hack on the sales growth front that we found working really well.
Oh, wow. So interesting. I think I first got one of those almost a year ago. And it just like hit
Yeah.
me in the face. It was like, what is that? It was so new. I never opened it. Honestly, I was just like, oh, no, 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 no. That's too much. I mean, we have to get to know each other first before you send me an audio.
Yeah.
But maybe, I mean, I could understand that, if you're curious, like what it could be, or maybe, for me, for example, when something like this happens, I go to the profile first and I see like, is there anything of interest?
Mm.
And if yeah, then I'll probably listen. But it's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay,
Yeah, you're so
that
right.
is truly a
It's
hack.
it's part of a you've highlighted there part of a few tactics, right? Like it's, as you say, like not everyone is going to open that straight away. They might explore around your profile. So your profile has got to be like a landing page. It's got to be about who you are, the problems you're solving, the value you add. You've got to have posts that you've been sharing, having put yourself out there, because people are going to do that sense check, that background check before maybe opening that. So there's definitely, it's always with these hacks, it's a few things that come together. Um, but yeah, it's something that worked really well for us, and we've moved on to other things now. But certainly seeing, I mean, I'm getting them now from software companies, right? Hey, do you want some more developers? So yeah, so it's kind of like, okay, what can we
Yes.
do now? What's the next stage? What's the next thing that we can try to keep going forward and upward?
Right, right. Always move the goalpost. Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing it and sharing the story. I loved it. I would honestly love to ask a lot more questions because you're working with AI. You're building new features. Happy to do it again if you're willing.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. And yeah, I'd love to be back for a part two at some point in the future. So yeah, let's dig more into the details, technology side of things, and yeah, just chat a bit more about the progress since this one. It's been good fun.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Nick, and take care.